Hello, everyone. Welcome to MVP Tech Bytes. Today we have a very special guest, Kazeem. Kazeem, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. Like you rightly mentioned, my name is Kazeem. I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer. My journey in tech has been an exciting one. It's filled with opportunities to learn and share knowledge with others. I'm a passionate advocate for all things cloud and the metaverse as well, but with special interest now in Azure. People can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram as Kazim Can Teach. And if you like to follow me on LinkedIn, then you have to look up my name, my full name now, Kazeem Adegboyega. So it's great, and I'm honored to be on your show as well.
No problem. I'll add your LinkedIn profiles and everything in the show notes. Now, one question. Where are you
Okay.
from, actually? Where are you located right now?
Okay, I'm based in Nigeria.
Oh, great.
I travel a lot. I do a lot of traveling within the country in Nigeria. So there was a time I was in Lagos. I moved to
Mhm.
Abuja, and a project brought me back to Lagos, and I've relocated again. So presently, I'm based in Ibadan.
So,
Okay,
Kazeem,
okay.
today we're going to talk about Azure governance and compliance. So, what is Azure governance and compliance?
All right. Thank you, Taswar, for that question. I have a slide prepared. Perhaps we should switch to the slides now so we can look at things from the slide. All right. Thank you very much, Taswar, for that question. So as we can see on the screen, Azure governance um, refers to set of policies, practices, and procedures that we implement to manage and control resources in the Azure cloud. And people might
Okay.
be wondering, so what is the purpose here? The purpose is to act as a framework for organizing and overseeing how organizations' resources are deployed, utilized, and managed in the Azure cloud. So that is what Azure governance is. And we also have compliance on the other side. So, and compliance on the other hand deals with adhering to industry regulations, standards, and best practices within the Azure cloud. So, the objective of compliance is to ensure that organizations using Azure complies with legal requirements, industry specific standards to protect their data and maintain privacy. So that is what Azure compliance and governance is all about. So perhaps
So,
I should recap as well. So
yeah.
in summary, Azure governance involves having a structured framework to manage and control resources in Azure, while Azure compliance focuses on meeting regulatory and industry standards to ensure security and lawful use of Azure.
Great. So if I try to make an analogy out of it, the governance is almost like you are required to drive on a highway at a certain speed. There's signs of it, like you are managing it. There's a procedure of it that you cannot go over that speed. And compliance is more like you're finding out, okay, on these kinds of streets, regularly you should be driving 50 or whatever. But on these highways, compliance wise, because it's such a long road and there's not going to be people on it, so that's why it's going to be 100. So you're looking all over the world to see what would be a compliance more related to a standard towards driving on a highway. Do I get that straight?
That's very correct as well. So I
Yeah.
guess you're putting on your MVP, your formal MVP ads now to help summarize this. That's correct.
No problem. I was just trying to think of an analogy of it. Okay, great. So, what are the significance though? Like, I mean, okay, now we talked about governance and compliances. What are the significance of these contexts within Azure? Like, we talked about it, but like, what about the in Azure? What can you do with it?
Oh, okay, okay. First of all, people might view Azure governance and compliance as checkbox in Azure blueprints, that ensures that tasks are done correctly.
Mhm.
However, in reality, Azure governance and compliance serve a more profound purpose. they play a crucial role in optimizing resource management and also helping us mitigate risk, right? So those are the purpose of Azure governance and compliance. Let me give an example, Taswar. For example, the reason why an organization might choose to host their resources in one region and not another region might be because of cost consideration, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's not enough to just tell your administrators to only create their resources in a particular region. You have to be proactive about it, right? So Azure governance and compliance can help you do just that, right?
Okay.
So the significance of Azure governance and compliance in Azure is a big one, right? Because it serves as the bedrock for secure, efficient, and ethical operation and risk management in the Azure cloud.
Great. So in some form is actually more of like not just cost considerations. It could be like one of the options is cost considerations that you should be launching it in like in South Africa only sort of thing because of
Exactly.
cost it's cheaper or whatever reason. Another could be most probably be regional sort of thing, as in like our data cannot go outside of Africa. It has to remain
Exactly.
in Africa due to some rules or regulation of some sort of thing. And the governance helps you with that. So I was going to ask you, what are the key Azure services or tools that support these kinds of compliance?
Okay. So in the area of governance and compliance, Azure offers powerful tools and services to ensure robust and secure operations. So I'll just mention a few of them. So I'm just going to give a 1,000-foot view
Mhm.
about a few of some of the services. So at the top of the list, we have Azure Policy itself, right?
Mhm.
So you can see Azure Policy as your rule book, for Azure. So it helps
Mhm.
you define and enforce rules that ensures compliance with organization policies and industry standards as well. So that's one service you can leverage. Another one that we do have is the Azure Blueprint, right?
Mhm.
Azure Blueprints help you craft a master plan for your Azure architecture, right? So it helps you set up the foundation for consistent governance across your entire project, across your entire Azure project. So that's another tool or another service on Azure that you can leverage when it comes to compliance and governance. There's another one. We do have the Azure Security Center, as we can see on
Mhm.
the screen. So Azure Security Center is your cybersecurity ally in the cloud. So it helps you
Mhm.
detect and respond to threats, ensuring that you have a secure and compliant cloud environment. So that's
Mhm.
another one. And lastly, on the screen, we have Azure Monitor and Log Analytics. You visualize Azure Monitor and Log Analytics as your surveillance system in Azure, right? It helps you
Mhm.
monitor performance and analyze resource data that you can use for auditing and compliance, right?
Mhm.
So these are just a few of the services and
Mhm.
tools that we can leverage when it comes to compliance and regulations, compliance in Azure. And I've only given a 1,000-foot view explanation of this tool. So if our audience would like to learn more, I will encourage them to just look up Microsoft documentation on the internet, or they can look up Microsoft Learn, or perhaps they
Mhm.
want to join myself and some other Microsoft Learn experts in our various Microsoft Learn room to learn more about some of these tools.
So I also wanted to ask, because I mean, we see the security center, we see the Azure monitoring when we log into the portal. We also see kind of the Azure policies. But can you actually discuss a little bit more about the roles of Azure policy and Azure blueprints?
All right. Azure Policy and Azure Blueprint plays an important role in maintaining compliance within the Azure environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with Azure Policy. Azure Policy serves as the enforcement mechanism, ensuring alignment with your organization policies and regulatory standards. So that's what you use Azure Policy for. So you can say that it functions as a vigilance guardian, right? Verifying that your resources are there to establish rules that you've defined for your Azure environment, right? So that is what Azure Policy is all about. And on the other hand, we have Azure Blueprint. So Azure Blueprint is like the architect, right? Setting up a structured environment that incorporates policies, resource group, and even templates, right? So Azure Blueprint, we can say that it's a way of saying this is how we do things around here, right? So that is Azure Blueprint. So collectively now, they guarantee that your Azure configuration is structured and adheres to established rules, creating an organized, compliant digital environment for us.
Okay, so if I break it down a bit, the Azure Policy is almost like a policeman who actually enforces making sure that these things are being actually run properly. And the Blueprint is more like the headquarters of the police to say, okay, this is the way that we want them to run, and here's the policy based on the environment and the templates that we're going to run in each of these cities. You policemen, Azure Policy, go and enforce those. Do I get that right?
Correct. That's correct as well.
Yeah. So thank you, Kazeem. Let's be a little bit more creative now. Let's jump into a demo because we all like demos, right?
Okay. All right, Taswar. So what I'm going to do is to walk people through how to implement compliance using Azure Policy, right?
Okay.
So what we're going to simulate is that we have a policy that states that no one should be allowed to create resources in other regions except Africa. So our task here is going to be to restrict the creation of resources within our Azure environment to only the African region. So that's what we're going to be looking at Taswar in this demo.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Let's see how to set up Azure Policy using the Azure portal. I am the Azure portal here, and from the search box, I'm going to type in policy. Let's give it a click. From the policy page, under the authoring section, we're going to create a new policy definition. So I'm going to click on definitions. And from here, we can click on policy definition to create a new policy definition. That would be one way of doing it. Another way of doing it would be to see if the action that you wish to perform can be found in this list of policy definition templates. Again, the action that we wish to carry out is to prevent people from creating resources outside of the African region. And we should be able to find that in this list of templates as allowed locations. All right, this is what we're looking for. We'll give it a click. So we're going to click on assign from here. So let's start with the basics tab. One of the first things we need to do under the basic tab is to assign it a scope. So I'll click here to do that. Now the scope can either be subscription or resource group. For this demo, we'll go with subscription. So I'm going to choose a valid subscription here and click select. Make sure to give it an assignment name, and you can also give it a description if you wish. And also ensure that the policy enforcement is set to enable. We're going to maintain the default values that we have under the advanced tab, and proceed next to the Parameters tab. The Parameters tab is where we get to select our location. And our location for this demo is Africa. So I'll click on this drop down and type in Africa. We currently have 3 Azure data centers in Africa. So we're going to go ahead and select the 3. The 3, by the way, are located in South Africa. So I'll select the 3. And the next tab is remediation. Remediation is a way to handle non-compliant resources. You can create a remediation task for resources to bring them to a desired state and into compliance. We don't need to do anything here. Next, we have non-compliance messages tab. This is where we show a friendly non-compliant message to anyone who violates the policy. How about we type in, sorry, you are only allowed to create resources in the African region for compliance reasons. Next, let's click on Review plus Create, and we can go ahead and create this policy. Now the policy has been created, but note that you might need to wait for a period of 5 to 15 minutes for the policy to get propagated and take effect. Now with the policy in place, let's test its effectiveness. Let's attempt to create a virtual network. So let's search for virtual network. Let's give it a click. Click on Create. And let's give our virtual network a name. And notice that the region is outside of Africa. Let's click on Review plus Create. And as you can see, the Azure policy prevented this deployment. Let's click to view the policy violation. And here we're able to see our non-compliant message that we configured earlier. Sorry, you are only allowed to create resources in the African region for compliance reasons. Now let's go back and attempt to create the same VNet. But this time I'm going to choose an African region. Click Review plus Create. And let's click on Create. Good. We're now able to create our virtual network.
So great demo, Kazeem. I really appreciate it. It was really helpful to find out the policies you could set for Africa. So any other call for actions you want to have the listener do?
Okay, first of all, it's been a pleasure discussing the topic Azure governance and compliance with you, Taswar. And for our audience, I would encourage them to take a proactive approach to implementing governance strategies within their Azure environment, right? And additionally, I would encourage them to engage with the Azure community, join various Microsoft Learn experts, like I mentioned earlier, in their various learning rooms. So when you come to those learning rooms, you meet experts, teach various topics, various cloud-related or Microsoft-related topics now. So they can get to ask them questions, share their experience as well. So I feel the more we collaborate and learn from each other, the better we become, right? So lastly, if you're new to Azure and you like to learn, I have some cool videos, up on my channel, and it's Tech Talk with Kazeem. So so Taswar, I feel that the more we collaborate and learn from each other, the better. Encourage people who are new to Azure, looking to learn Azure. I want to encourage them to also visit my YouTube channel. So it's called Tech Talk with Kazeem, right? So I have some cool videos up on the channel that people can look at, that can teach, especially newbies, Azure. So subscribe to my channel and learn some Azure.
Thank you so much, Kazeem. And I'll put your channel in the show notes so people could actually follow it. And it was great talking to you. Hopefully, we'll see each other next time somewhere in Nigeria. You never know.
Hopefully so, Taswar.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.